Real quickly before we begin, I want to thank this video's sponsor, CarMarshal.com. CarMarshal.com can save you lots of money on buying used or new vehicles, cars, trucks, school buses. If you want to save money, I'll have a link in the description down below. I know I'm going to...
Right now on Fox 35 News at 10.
All right, if you don't like the current court system, create your own.
The FBI telling Fox 35 there is a growing number of people in Central Florida who want to indict public officials in their alternative courts. You'll hear from both sides coming up.
On Fox 35, 5 o'clock, we told you about the fast-growing sovereign citizen movement right here in Central Florida that has made up of people basically who just don't believe that they are subject to the same laws that you and I are.
We also introduced you to the law enforcement agencies tasked with tracking the criminal element within the movement over safety concerns. But as Fox 35's Ann Keel found out, some of the believers may not be violent at all. Still, they're making waves.
They are not the only group that believes our current judicial system is inundated with corruption. Local members of a group called the National Liberty Alliance are attempting to establish their own grand juries that are not formed or controlled by judges and or state attorneys. The FBI, well aware, as are local authorities who believe sovereign citizens are behind this national endeavor that has been attempted before but didn't gain this kind of traction.
Where's your Florida issued license?
I don't require it.
The man in the YouTube video, a reported sovereign citizen who claims to exist beyond the realm of government authority.
They don't have a driver's license. They don't have license tags on their cars. In my heart, I support it, but I don't want to be branded a sovereign citizen, even though it's in my file right now.
Plus, Mark Schmitter, a member of the National Liberty Alliance who claims to have already spent time behind bars because of his beliefs, says he's busy organizing a common law grand jury in Orange County.
I have larger dragons to slay. We have to give the power back to the people. The way the Constitution is called We the People.
The grassroots movement's initiative is aimed at indicting perceived corrupt public officials. So we asked Schmitter and another organizer, Don Kepis, who is on their list. Their answer?
Governor Chris, Governor Scott, the Department of Education, every one of them will be indicted. They're all operating fraudulently.
They claim those officials should be indicted because they have enforced statewide Common Core academic standards for Florida kids, and they feel it should be left to local governments.
They have approached clerks of courts asking for space and a budget. This doesn't go over well with the judges and the state attorney.
UCF Deputy Police Chief Brett Mead, an area expert on sovereigns because of a previous post in an intelligence unit, says officials in Ocala, as well as half a dozen Florida counties, are dealing with what the FBI refers to as illegitimate courts organized by followers of the sovereign citizen movement.
There's a large group of people that embrace the ideology.
An ideology that is already keeping FBI agents busy pursuing sovereigns who allegedly are engaged in a range of ideologically driven financial crimes, including debt schemes, forgery, tax, mortgage, and securities fraud. That along with frivolous lawsuits or liens.
They're thinking anti-government at all levels.
Orange County Comptroller Martha Haney, well aware of these tactics that can also become a cumbersome nuisance for her office if not dealt with properly, and local courts that have now become familiar with filings like this that seek to, quote, reestablish a common law grand jury.
They will use that from a propaganda standpoint to further their cause.
Meade says these anti-government extremists should not expect any cooperation at the county level. His warning, moving forward, could land them on the other side of the criminal justice system.
This is our last legal recourse to be able to take back the government for the people.
The government's gone rogue, not the sovereign citizens.
The organizers of this Orange County common law grand jury, who repeatedly reject that sovereign citizen label, claim they are committed to the cause, these alternative courts, but they wouldn't say anything about their game plan moving forward. In the studio, Ann Keel, Fox 35 News.
Does the government work for us or do we work for the government? Tonight, what if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the whole purpose of the Constitution was to limit the government? What if Congress's enumerated powers in the Constitution no longer limited Congress, but were actually used as a justification to extend Congress's authority over every realm of human life? What if the president, meant to be an equal to Congress, has instead become a democratically elected, term-limited monarch? What if the president assumed that everything he did was legal just because he's the president? What if he could interrupt your regularly scheduled radio and TV programming for a special message from him? What if he could declare war on his own? What if he could read your emails and your texts without a search warrant? What if he could kill you without warning? What if Supreme Court justices no longer looked to the Constitution to determine the constitutionality of a law, but rather simply to what justices who preceded them thought about it? What if the rights and principles guaranteed in the Constitution have been so distorted in the past 200 years as to be unrecognizable by the founders? What if the 50 states were no longer sovereign entities, equals to each other, and parents of the federal government they voluntarily constituted? What if the states were mere provinces of a totally nationalized and fully centralized government? What if the Constitution was amended stealthily, not by constitutional amendments duly ratified by the states, but by the constant and persistent expansion of the federal government's role in our lives? What if the federal government decided if its own powers were proper and constitutional? What if the Constitution were no longer the supreme law of the land? What if you needed a license from the government to speak, to assemble, or to protest against the government? What if the government didn't like what you planned to say, and so it didn't give you the license? What if the right to keep and bear arms only applied to the government? What if posse comitatus, the federal law that prohibits our military from occupying our streets, were no longer in effect? What if the government considered the military an adequate dispenser of domestic law enforcement? What if cops looked and acted like troops and you couldn't distinguish the military from the police? What if you were not secure in your person, in your papers, and in your property? What if federal agents could write their own search warrants in defiance of the Constitution? What if the government could decide when you were and were not entitled to a jury trial? What if the government could take your property whenever it wanted? What if the government could continue prosecuting you until it got the verdict it wanted? What if the government could force you to testify against yourself simply by labeling you a domestic terrorist? What if the government could torture you until you said what the government wanted to hear? What if people running for president actually supported torture? What if the government tortured your children to get to you? What if government judges and government lawyers intimidated juries into convicting the innocent? What if the government could send you to your death and your innocence meant nothing so long as the government's procedures were followed? What if America's prison population, the largest in the world, was a cruel and unusual way for a country to be free? What if half the prison population never harmed anyone but themselves? What if the people had no rights except those the government chose to let them have? What if the states had no rights except to do as the federal government commanded? What if our elected officials didn't really live among us, but instead all had their hearts and homes in Washington, D.C.? What if the government could strip you of your rights because of where your mother was when you were born? What if the income tax was unconstitutional? What if the states were convinced to give up their representation in Congress? What if the government tried to ban you from using a substance in your body that is older than the government itself? What if voting didn't mean anything anymore because both political parties stand for big government? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? The Constitution be damned. What if the government was the reason we don't have a Constitution anymore? What if you could love your country but hate what the government has done to it? What if sometimes to love your country you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if I'm right? What if the government is wrong? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use. And also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, you know, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.